Just came back from work, got dinner plans, so I'm shooting this video in a white shirt and a blazer. Arsenal, what makes them such a dangerous team and which of their weaknesses can we exploit on Sunday? Let's analyze. Alright, so in this video analysis, we're gonna look at three aspects of how Arsenal play. The first thing we're gonna look at is what do they actually do when they have the ball? And then the second thing is set pieces. That's a very important aspect of modern football. And then we're gonna look at how they press. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna look at is what do they do with the ball at their feet? Here there is one player that is essential to how Arsenal build up from the back, and it's Ben White. Now, I do play Fantasy Premier League. I'm sure that many of you also do. And Gabriel was in my team for game week 1. And then I realized that he actually is not being picked by Mikel Arteta. But after watching their game against Nottingham Forest, it took me 15 minutes into the game to understand the tactical reasons behind Mikel Arteta picking Ben White instead of Gabriel. Now, as you know, Arsenal have been playing Thomas Partey as the right back. But actually Thomas Partey, who you can see here, is actually performing as an inverted wing back, if you may, which is of course the trend right now in football tactics. But Mikel Arteta is doing it differently. So basically he has Partey, who operates as a defensive midfielder when Arsenal has the ball, and then who operates as a right back when Arsenal doesn't have the ball. Which is of course a cliche right now because every manager is using it. Every manager in the league is using inverted wing backs right now. But the difference with that, Mikel Arteta right now is using Ben White, his right-sided centre back, more like a fullback whenever Arsenal have the ball. Effectively playing with just William Saliba as their sole centre back. And that blew my mind when I saw it because on paper, it has the potential to be truly groundbreaking. So now let's look at how it makes Arsenal really strong, and then later I'm going to show you what are some of the opportunities that we have, some of the weaknesses that we can exploit in this system. So this was against Nottingham Forest. Obviously, as you can see here, in the same sequence, Saka and Odegaard, combining on the right-hand side. But now, as you can see, Ben White, who is the right-sided centre-back, he's not playing in a back three, and he's not the right back. He's the right-sided centre-back in a back four. He's not supposed to be here. But let's look at what he's going to do. So obviously Arsenal are keeping the ball. They're trying to open up the Nottingham Forest defense. Now look at Ben White. What he's going to do now is that as Odegaard is trying to find a solution, Ben White is going to provide it. Why? Because by using Thomas Partey as an inverted wingback, using Odegaard, who is left-footed on the right, and Saka also who is left-footed on the right, means that Arteta does not have that natural width that a right-footed, right-sided player provides. And so the downside to using Partey is that you are sacrificing width on the right-hand side. This is why he's actually using Ben White as a kind of a hybrid between a centre-back and a right back, right? Look at the run that he's doing. This is a right back run. He's going beyond Odegaard and then he puts in a cross. This is right back play by the right-sided centre-back of Arsenal. Let's look at another example. This was in the game against Fulham. By the way, this pattern of play has been used by Arteta in each of their 3 Premier League games to date. Again, look, he's making a move into the right side of Arsenal's attack. He's not a right back. This is where a right back is supposed to be. He's the right-sided centre back. And then Odegaard, obviously, is going to find him with a pass. And then Ben White, of course, is going to go with a pass towards the left-hand side. This is also a very clear pattern of how they play. So basically what Mikel Arteta is trying to do is 2 things. The first thing, what he's trying to do is that theoretically, it has the potential to revolutionize football because with 2 players, Thomas Partey and Ben White, he is occupying 3 positions, right-sided centre-back, right back, and defensive midfield. What this allows Arsenal to do is to create overloads, numerical superiority in certain areas. What Arsenal tried to do is that they tried to create numerical superiority on the right-hand side, for example here against Fulham, in order to create space for Martinelli. So what they do is they create overloads. As you can see here, 6 Fulham players are on the right hand side. That means there are not as many players on the left. So what they're gonna do, quickly switch play towards Martinelli. Why? Because they want to maximize Martinelli's ability in 1v1 situations. And so if you put Martinelli in a situation where he only has to deal with 1 defender, then obviously he's gonna be much more effective than if he has to deal with 2 or 3 defenders. So here they're creating 1v1. And then Fabio Vieira also is moving into this half space, creating another 1v1 situation. And then Tete And then that's how they got the penalty to equalize against Fulham. And here we are actually going to see it much clearer in this sequence. Because now I'm going to show you what actually goes wrong with this Arsenal, Ben White Partey system that Mikel Arteta is trying to implement. Here, as you can see, look at this, what Fulham are doing. They're brilliant. Marco Silva is a great tactical manager. Look at Martinelli. He's on the left-hand side by himself. Nobody cares about him. The right back here does not care about where Martinelli is. We're going to deal with him later. What the Fulham players are trying to do is that they are aware of what Arsenal are trying to do, which means creating overloads in this area with Partey, with Ben White, with Declan Rice, and with Saka, who's going to come into the play soon. So obviously here now you have Ben White, who is the right-sided centre-back, Partey, who is the right-back, moving into defensive midfield, with Declan Rice giving more of a free role. So Arsenal trying to do all of these sophisticated moves, but Fulham are sticking to basics. Press with intensity, and it's okay. Don't worry about the space that Martinelli has, because the more intensely you press these Arsenal players, the less likely they are actually to execute an accurate pass towards Martinelli. Therefore, Arsenal's system is not going to work. So what Fulham did, press, and then the moment Saka misplaced the pass, because Partey is already moving to defensive midfield and Ben White is already moving into that right back position, as the pattern that Mikel Arteta is trying to implement dictates, it means that Saliba is the only real centre-back in this system. That means that there is a huge Ben White-shaped hole that Arsenal have in their defense. And now Saliba finds himself in a situation where he's in 1v2 situation. There is no way he can win this, and then Andres Pereira scores the goal for Fulham. This was a great game, tactically speaking, for Fulham. And here you can see Mikel Arteta's reaction over here. Look at him. He's got, calm down, guys. Calm, take it easy. And then he grabs his head because he knows that this is disastrous play for Arsenal, and it's definitely going to lead to a goal. Now let's look at set pieces. So Arsenal are actually good at set pieces, but also disastrous, horrendous at set pieces. Now, I've made a mistake here, guys, because when I was sequencing my sequences, I started with Arsenal's weakness. So let's actually fast forward so I can show you what they're good at before I show you what they're bad at, okay? So, okay. Oops. Okay, so this was in the game against Nottingham Forest. This was how Arsenal scored their first goal. It came from a set piece. And again, on the edge of the box, we have Odegaard over here and Martinelli. It's actually the same trend that Erik ten Hag is using by having Marcus Rashford and Antony. Why? Because with the left-footed player and a right-footed player, if the ball reaches them, then they can clearly shoot at goal with a high chance of scoring. And both of them, with Odegaard, great playmaker, and Martinelli, great dribbler, great in 1v1 situations. That means if they get the ball, you get to keep the pressure on the opposition. So here, there's a corner, clearance. The ball is obviously going to make its way towards Martinelli over here. Once it does, Martinelli is of course very comfortable in these situations, much more than if you had someone like Thomas Partey, for example. And also, let's face it, Odegaard and Martinelli are actually useless in the box because both of them are not good targets in set pieces, right? So Martinelli now dribbles with the ball. Arsenal are keeping the pressure on Nottingham Forest. And then in these kind of situations, 1v1, Martinelli is one of the best in the world. And then he goes in. That was actually a great move right there. Nketiah gets the ball. Nketiah is a great goal poacher. And then goal. Arsenal's first goal of the season. That's how it came. From set piece, by using that strategy where you keep two of your best dribblers or playmakers on the edge of the box. But that can actually backfire because obviously they played against Nottingham Forest, which, as I've shown you in the Manchester United versus Nottingham Forest tactical analysis, Nottingham Forest are one of the best teams when it comes to transitioning from defense to attack. Manchester United are weak when it comes to transitioning from attack to defense, and so are Arsenal. Because look at this, another corner for Arsenal, and then Nottingham Forest quickly, again, as you can see on the edge of the box, we have someone like Trossard, for example, right here, but all of Arsenal's best defensive players, they are in the box, and then they can attack with Awoniyi over here, and then Elanga, who is quite fast. That's a great break for Nottingham Forest over there, and then nobody can catch Elanga. The Arsenal defense are quite disorganized whenever they are facing lightning fast counter-attacks like this one, and then of course, that's 2-1 for Arsenal, so Nottingham Forest got one goal back, but and also they could have scored way more goals later on and could have gotten a point against Arsenal. So this is definitely an area that we could exploit against Arsenal, because what we saw right now with Awoniyi and Elanga, those could be Højlund if he ends up playing, and Marcus Rashford, for example, or Alejandro Garnacho. But there is another weakness in the way Arsenal defends set pieces. When I saw this goal, this was Palhinha's equalizing goal in the Arsenal versus Fulham game. When I saw this, all I could think of was, of course, the numbers, because I looked at the box and my brain just registered way more Arsenal players than Fulham players, way more red than white and black. And actually, if you look at it, the ratio of Arsenal players to Fulham players in the box is actually 2-1. There are 10 Arsenal players in the box and only 5 Fulham players in the box. And yet Fulham were able to find Palhinha and he was able to score. What this tells me, and of course, if you think about it, Arsenal don't actually have very good players who are good at defending set pieces. They don't. I think Gabriel is their best defender when it comes to that, but he doesn't play. So with players like Ben White and Saliba, for example, or Thomas Partey, we do have players who can match that. Players like Rafael Varane, players like Casemiro, who is really good in set pieces, as well as Højlund, if he ends up playing, can actually be quite dangerous in these kind of situations. I don't think that we need to have 7 or 8 players in the box. Let's have 4 or 5 of our best players. So the 3 that I mentioned, and then you can add someone like Dalot or even Wan-Bissaka, for example. And then with Christian Eriksen or Bruno Fernandes's delivery, then we can actually have quite a few good chances from set pieces. So here Fulham and Nottingham Forest are definitely highlighting some weaknesses that Arsenal do have in defending set pieces. Next, let's look at something that we should definitely not do. This was from the game against Crystal Palace. Arsenal are really good at pressing on the front foot. And they do something that is similar to what I showed you in my analysis of the game against Wolves, which is that they are very good at clogging the central areas, pushing the opposition towards the flanks. And when you do that, of course, it is extremely hard to build up because, as you can see here, if you go into the wide areas, the opposition can actually use the touchline to box you in. As you can see here, look at Arsenal players. You have 3 players against, I think that's Schlupp over there, with the line. So it's as if he's being pressed by 4 players. There is no way he can get the ball out in this kind of situations. And so Arsenal are very good at getting the ball, winning it here, and then counter-attacking quickly. Look at that. That could have been a goal right there from Nketiah. It hit the post. But for Manchester United, it would be suicidal for us because we are not very good at building up from the back. And Arsenal are really good at pressing you through the middle and forcing you to go wide. We are playing away from home. You really don't want to start the game in the first 10-15 minutes losing the ball because of Arsenal's pressing. What I think we should do is exactly how we used Weghorst against Leeds United and Barcelona. If you've been watching Scarlet Report, during last season, you will probably remember when I said that we should use Weghorst not really as an old-fashioned target man, but rather as someone who brings the other into play. Now with Onana, we have a really good ball-playing goalkeeper who can actually hit highly accurate long balls towards Højlund, and then next to Højlund, instead of just hoofing it up to the big guy, we can have other players like Bruno Fernandes and Marcus Rashford if he is on the left-hand side, or players like Anthony, Bruno Fernandes and Casemiro if he's on the right-hand side, who are ready to win those second balls. And that way we can actually bypass Arsenal's press and we can just put the ball in dangerous areas. And let's face it, against players like Ben White and Saliba, I really fancy someone like Højlund. And their midfield is not as physical as the players that we have. So we can definitely use this to kind of bypass their press. But we should not try to build up from the back. At least not if Arsenal are set up this way. Because that would be suicidal, and we really don't want to be in a situation where they start winning these kind of duels. They start winning the ball because of the press, and then the crowd starts lifting them up. We really don't want to have that where the crowd is against us and we are losing the ball because of Arsenal's press. So I think these are 3 main areas that we need to focus on in our preparation against Arsenal. And I think, listen, I'm not predicting the future or anything, but I think that these could be key areas in determining the results that we get against Arsenal in Sunday. If we are able to exploit set pieces, if we are able to exploit their mistakes as they use those fancy, sophisticated, Partey/Ben White moves in the build-up phase, and also if we don't give them the opportunity to press us and win the ball high up the pitch, then I think we can beat Arsenal. And also, they don't have their mojo back. Because during these games against Crystal Palace should have had a penalty. Against Fulham, they won, but they scored 1 goal with Bassi down, and also they got a penalty. And so I think that they are not actually as dominating or as well-oiled as they were last season. So I think it's a 50-50 and I think we can win. But we have to be mindful of these areas right here. What do you guys think about the game against Arsenal? Do you think we're gonna win? What is your score prediction? And are there any other areas that you think we should be concerned about or we should pay close attention to? I hope that you've enjoyed this video analysis. I'm gonna try to make pre-match video analysis as often as I can. Until next time, see you on Monday with another post-match analysis video. Cheers.